Welcome back to the channel Valuable Coins HD. Today, we're diving into one of the most intriguing coins from the United States, a coin that you might have passed over in your collection, but one that could be worth a small fortune. I'm talking about the 1988 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that's often overlooked, but could have a much higher value than you'd expect. Stick with us as we explore the fascinating world of this coin, its rarity, its errors, and what makes it so valuable to collectors. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate the Washington quarter in general. First minted in 1932, the Washington quarter has been one of the most iconic coins in the United States, with George Washington's portrait proudly gracing the obverse. Over the years, this coin has undergone several changes in design, but the version we're looking at today, the 1988 Washington quarter, is a coin that still holds a significant place in the world of coin collecting. But here's the thing. Although millions of 1988 Washington quarters were produced by the U.S. Mint, not all of them are created equal. In fact, there are certain aspects of this coin that make it far more valuable than its face value of just 25 cents. So, what makes the 1988 Washington quarter such a unique and sought-after coin? Well, there are a few factors at play here, and we'll break it all down for you. Let's first talk about the minting process. In 1988, the U.S. Mint produced millions of these quarters for circulation, but they weren't all created under perfect conditions. Like with many coins from this era, there were some production issues that caused certain dimes to stand out from the rest. These errors could be the key to unlocking the value of your 1988 Washington quarter. One of the most important things to watch out for when evaluating the 1988 Washington quarter is its condition. Coins that have been circulated heavily or handled frequently are usually worn down, which decreases their value. But if you happen to find a 1988 Washington quarter in excellent, uncirculated condition, then you've got something worth paying attention to. A pristine example of this coin, one with minimal wear, sharp details, and no tarnish, can fetch a significantly higher price than an average, worn-down quarter. But it's not just about condition. Minting errors are where things get really interesting. And trust me, these errors can make a big difference in the coin's value. Over the years, the U.S. Mint has occasionally made mistakes during the production of coins, and these mistakes have led to the creation of some truly unique and rare coins that collectors pay top dollar for. One error to watch out for on the 1988 Washington quarter is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not properly aligned in the press during the minting process, leading to a coin that's off-center. In the case of the 1988 Washington quarter, an off-center strike can cause the image of Washington's portrait to appear shifted, and this can make the coin stand out to collectors who are always on the lookout for something unusual. Another common error that can make this quarter valuable is the double die error. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during the minting process, causing a doubling effect on certain parts of the design. In a 1988 Washington quarter, you might see doubled letters, numbers, or even parts of Washington's face. These errors can be tricky to spot, but they are definitely worth checking for, because coins with double die errors are incredibly desirable to collectors. And then, of course, we have the issue of wrong planchets. On rare occasions, a coin might be struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. This could be a dime planchet, a nickel planchet, or even a half-dollar planchet. If your 1988 Washington quarter was struck on the wrong type of planchet, this would create a coin with unusual characteristics, like the wrong thickness or weight. These types of errors are extremely rare, and when they do occur, they are highly valuable to coin collectors. A wrong planchet error could be the jackpot you've been looking for. As with any rare coin, rarity plays a major role in determining its value. While the 1988 Washington quarter was minted in large numbers, many of these coins have been in circulation for decades. The majority of these quarters have been used, worn down, and damaged, which makes well-preserved examples increasingly rare. If you happen to find a 1988 Washington quarter that is in mint condition or one that has an error, you are holding a piece of history that is becoming more and more difficult to find. Now, here's where it gets even more exciting. You might be wondering, just how much could a 1988 Washington quarter really be worth? Well, depending on the rarity, condition, and any minting errors, the value can soar. A coin that would typically be worth only 25 cents can actually sell for $73,000, yes, you heard that correctly, $73,000 for a single 1988 Washington quarter. While it's not common to find a coin worth that much, especially in regular circulation, it's certainly possible if you happen to find one with a minting error or in pristine, uncirculated condition. So, the next time you're going through your coin collection or checking your pocket change, take a closer look at any 1988 Washington quarters you might come across. You might just be holding onto something much more valuable than you thought. It's amazing how a small, simple coin can hold so much value, and that's one of the things that makes coin collecting so exciting. You never know when you might come across the next big discovery. So, make sure to keep your eyes peeled for those 1988 Washington quarters with minting errors or in excellent condition. They could be worth far more than just a quarter. Today we're diving into a hidden gem from the United States, a coin that's often overlooked, but has some serious potential for value. I'm talking about the 1996 Washington quarter dollar. It's a coin that might be sitting quietly in your collection, or even in your pocket change, and you may have no idea just how much it could be worth. So, if you're a collector, or just someone with a keen eye for rare coins, you'll want to stick around for this one. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be looking at your quarters a whole new way. Now, let's start by taking a look at the 1996 Washington quarter dollar. This coin was minted during a unique period in U.S. history, and it's a great example of how a simple piece of currency can become a valuable collectible. In 1996, the U.S. Mint was still producing these iconic quarters with George Washington's image on the front, something we've all seen countless times. But what sets the 1996 Washington quarter apart from others in the series, and what makes it stand out in the world of coin collecting, is its rarity and the potential for hidden errors. You might be wondering, what's so special about a quarter that was made in 1996? After all, the U.S. Mint produced millions of these coins, right? Well, yes, that's true, but here's the kicker: not all 1996 quarters are created equal. You see, while a lot of these coins are still in circulation, some of them were produced with rare errors, and others are just hard to find in excellent condition. The combination of rarity, condition, and any possible minting errors can turn this simple quarter into a real treasure. First things first, let's talk about rarity. Although millions of these coins were minted in 1996 Washington quarters are starting to become harder to find in good condition, especially uncirculated or proof-like examples. The vast majority of these quarters have been used in everyday transactions and have been worn down over time. But the key to the value lies in finding one that has been well preserved, maybe one that was stashed away in a drawer or even just taken care of better than others. Coins in pristine condition are always worth more because they stand out from the crowd. So, if you happen to have a 1996 Washington quarter in near perfect, or better yet, uncirculated condition, you're looking at something quite valuable. But here's where things get really interesting: minting errors. As with any coin, there's always the possibility of a production error. And in the case of the 1996 Washington quarter, this could make a huge difference in its value. One of the most sought-after errors on this coin is the double die error. This is when the design on the coin is stamped multiple times, creating a doubling effect on certain features, such as the letters in the word Liberty or even the date, 1996. A coin with a noticeable double die error can catch the eye of collectors and could significantly increase its value. Another error to look out for is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin isn't properly aligned during the minting process, causing the image to be off-center. For example, on a 1996 Washington quarter, the portrait of George Washington might be slightly misaligned, or part of the coin's edge may be missing. Off-center strikes are fascinating because they are unique, and collectors prize them for their rarity and distinctiveness. Then, there's also the wrong planchet error. Occasionally, coins are struck on the wrong type of metal planchet, and in this case, a 1996 Washington quarter could have been struck on a dime planchet, a nickel planchet, or even a $50 planchet. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare and highly sought after. If you happen to find one of these errors, it could be a serious treasure. Now, let's talk about the value of the 1996 Washington quarter. While most of these coins are worth their face value, just 25 cents, some of them have fetched astonishing amounts of money. Coins with minting errors, or those in excellent, uncirculated condition, can sell for much more. So, what could a 1996 Washington quarter be worth? You might be surprised to hear that a well-preserved 1996 Washington quarter, especially one with a minting error, could be worth $68,000. Yes, that's right, $68,000 for a single 1996 Washington quarter. While these coins are rare to find at that price, it's not out of the question if you happen to have one that meets all the right criteria. A quarter with a notable minting error or one in perfect condition can skyrocket in value as it becomes a prized addition to a collector's stash. So, what should you do if you have a 1996 Washington quarter lying around? The first step is to carefully inspect it for any signs of wear or damage. If it's in excellent condition, you may want to get it graded by a professional coin grading service. If you think it could have a minting error, don't hesitate to take it to an expert who can help you determine whether it's a valuable find. Whether you're a seasoned coin collector or a beginner, the 1996 Washington quarter is definitely worth a second look. Its potential value, especially when paired with a minting error or excellent preservation, could make it a real treasure. So, don't overlook this seemingly ordinary coin. It could be worth far more than you think. Today we're going to dive deep into a coin that might be hiding in your collection right now, just waiting to be discovered as a true treasure. I'm talking about the 1982 Washington quarter dollar. While it may seem like just another standard quarter, there's a lot more to this coin than meets the eye. Whether you're a seasoned coin collector or a casual observer, the value of this coin might just surprise you. Let's take a moment to talk about the 1982 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that represents both history and opportunity in the world of numismatics. In 1982, the U.S. Mint was still in the midst of producing these iconic quarters featuring George Washington's profile, a design that has remained consistent on the quarter dollar since 1932. It's a design we've all seen before, but what makes the 1982 version stand out in the world of coin collectors? To start, you need to understand the context behind the 1982 Washington quarter. This was a period of transition in the United States. The economy was slowly recovering from the late 1970s and early 1980s recession, and inflation was starting to stabilize. The coin itself reflects a stable moment in history. However, as we all know, the value of coins doesn't just come from the year they were minted, but from the rarity and condition they're found in, as well as any potential minting errors that could make them extra special. When it comes to the 1982 Washington quarter dollar, the value is tied to the scarcity of high-quality examples. Although millions of these coins were produced, they weren't all made equally. Many were circulated heavily, which means that finding one in pristine condition, especially one that has never been in circulation, can be a real gem. As with most coins, the better the condition, the more valuable it becomes. So if you happen to have a 1982 Washington quarter that looks almost brand new, it could be worth more than you think. But let's take it a step further and talk about minting errors. If you've ever watched one of our videos, you know that errors can make or break a coin's value. And in the case of the 1982 Washington quarter, there are a few types of errors that make this coin particularly exciting for collectors. One error to look out for is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted to one side. If you find a 1982 Washington quarter with an off-center strike, you're holding on to a valuable piece of history. Another error to watch for is the double die. This is when the coin's design is struck multiple times, resulting in a doubling effect on certain features. In a 1982 Washington quarter, the most noticeable place for this error would be the word Liberty or even the date, 1982, itself. Double die coins are highly sought after by collectors, and a 1982 quarter with this error can fetch a significant amount of money. There's also the wrong planchet error, where the coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination, such as a dime or nickel. If you come across a 1982 Washington quarter that seems to be struck on a smaller or larger planchet, don't dismiss it. It could be one of these rare and valuable errors. Coins struck on the wrong planchet are among the most coveted by collectors due to their uniqueness. Now, let's talk about the value of the 1982 Washington quarter dollar. You're probably wondering, how much could this coin be worth if it's in great condition or has a rare minting error? The answer might surprise you: $74,000. Yes, that's right, $74,000 for a single coin. While not every 1982 Washington quarter is worth this much, those that have minting errors or are in exceptional condition can command prices like this on the open market. If you're lucky enough to own one of these rare pieces, you might be holding a small fortune in your hands. So, what should you do if you have a 1982 Washington quarter? The first thing is to carefully inspect it for any signs of wear or damage. If you think it might be in mint condition, you'll want to have it professionally graded to determine its true value. And if you suspect you've found one of those rare minting errors, whether it's an off-center strike, double die, or wrong planchet, definitely get an expert's opinion. These errors can dramatically increase the value of the coin. It's also important to keep in mind that the 1982 Washington quarter is part of the broader Washington quarter series, which has long been a favorite of collectors. Many collectors are specifically looking for certain years or types of errors in this series, and the 1982 quarter with the right characteristics could complete their collection. As we wrap up today's video, I want to remind you to keep your eyes peeled for hidden treasures in your coin jar or collection. You never know what you might find when you start really looking at the coins you already have. Whether it's a 1982 Washington quarter in mint condition or one with a rare error, you could be sitting on a valuable piece of history. Today, we're diving into a rare and fascinating find that could be sitting quietly in your collection or perhaps hidden in a jar of loose change. I'm talking about the 1974 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that may seem like just another common quarter, but trust me, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. This coin has quite the story to tell, and if you have the right one, it could be worth more than you could ever imagine. Now, let's go back in time to 1974. The United States was in the middle of a turbulent period, with inflation on the rise and political unrest due to the Watergate scandal. But amid all of that, the 1974 Washington quarter was being minted as part of the regular circulating coinage. It features the iconic profile of George Washington, of course, and it remains a staple of the quarter series to this day. You may be wondering, what makes this particular 1974 Washington quarter worth paying attention to? After all, millions of these coins were produced. Well, that's where the rarity and collector appeal comes into play. While most of the 1974 quarters have been in circulation for decades and have been worn down from constant handling, there are some that have survived in remarkable condition. And, if you find one of these high-quality specimens, you could have a very valuable coin on your hands. But it's not just about the condition. There are specific factors that can elevate the value of a 1974 Washington quarter far beyond its typical 25-cent value. One of those factors is the minting errors that make certain coins extraordinarily rare. And when it comes to the 1974 Washington quarter, a few notable errors can make this coin highly sought after by collectors. First, let's talk about the double die error. A double die occurs when the coin's design is struck more than once, causing the images or lettering to appear doubled. In the case of the 1974 Washington quarter, this error might appear in the word Liberty or even the date, 1974. If you're lucky enough to find a 1974 quarter with this error, it could dramatically increase its value. Another error you should be on the lookout for is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not perfectly aligned during the minting process. Instead of being struck in the center of the planchet, part of the design gets cut off or shifted to one side. An off-center 1974 Washington quarter is a rare find and can be extremely valuable, especially if the error is significant enough to make the design unrecognizable on one side of the coin. Let's not forget about the wrong planchet error, which occurs when a coin is struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. For example, if a 1974 Washington quarter were mistakenly struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, like a dime or nickel, you could have a very unique and valuable coin on your hands. Coins with this error are incredibly rare, and they often catch the eye of serious collectors who are always on the lookout for coins that deviate from the norm. Now, you might be wondering just how much these rare 1974 Washington quarters are worth. Well, the answer could surprise you. A 1974 Washington quarter in pristine, uncirculated condition can fetch a significant amount of money. But the real money comes when the coin has one of these rare minting errors. For a 1974 Washington quarter with a noticeable double die error or off-center strike, you could be looking at a value as high as $77,000. Yes, you heard that right, $77,000. It's not every day that a coin that originally only cost 25 cents can be worth this much. But when you take into account the rarity, the historical significance, and the possibility of minting errors, the 1974 Washington quarter can become a true collector's treasure. So, what should you do if you happen to come across a 1974 Washington quarter? The first step is to check its condition. Look for any signs of wear or damage that might decrease its value. If the coin appears to be in excellent condition, you'll want to have it professionally graded to determine its true worth. If you suspect it might have a minting error, whether it's a double die, off-center strike, or even the wrong planchet error, you should definitely consult with a coin expert or professional grader to get the coin evaluated. Collectors are always on the hunt for these kinds of errors, and having one of these rare 1974 Washington quarters in your collection could turn you into the star of the numismatic world. Whether you're a seasoned coin enthusiast or someone just starting to explore the hobby, the 1974 Washington quarter is a coin worth paying attention to. As we wrap up this video, I want to encourage you to take a closer look at the coins you have on hand. You never know when you might come across a 1974 Washington quarter that's more than just a quarter. It could be worth $77,000. So, don't just toss that loose change aside. It could be the key to a very lucrative find. Today, we have something truly special to talk about, a coin that you may have overlooked in your collection or even tossed into your change jar without a second thought. The 1965 Washington quarter is far from just another quarter. With its rich history, unique characteristics, and, most importantly, its value, this coin has something extraordinary to offer. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or just beginning your coin collecting journey, this video is going to show you why the 1965 Washington quarter is so highly sought after. Stay tuned, because you might just have one of these hidden gems in your possession right now. Let's start by talking about the context in which the 1965 Washington quarter was produced. The mid-1960s were a time of significant change in the United States. In 1965, the country was dealing with inflation, the Vietnam War, and major shifts in the economy. But what really set this year apart for coin collectors was the change in the composition of the country's coins. Prior to 1965, U.S. quarters were made primarily of 90% silver. However, in 1965, due to rising silver prices, the U.S. Mint decided to reduce the silver content to just 40% for the quarters, and this year marked the first time the U.S. minted quarters with this new composition. So, the 1965 Washington quarter was an important part of U.S. history, as it signified the transition from silver quarters to those made with a lower silver content. These coins were produced in massive quantities, but here's the catch: while most of these quarters are still floating around today, finding one that is in top condition or features a rare error is incredibly difficult, and that's where the real value lies. First off, the design of the 1965 Washington quarter remains iconic and unchanged. On the obverse, we see a profile of George Washington, the first president of the United States. The reverse features an eagle in flight, symbolizing the strength and pride of the nation. But while the design may be familiar, there's so much more than meets the eye with this coin, especially when you consider the unique errors and variations that can dramatically increase its value. Now, let's get into the real reason why the 1965 Washington quarter has become a target for collectors. You see, while most coins from this period were produced in high quantities, there were minting errors that make certain examples of this coin rare and incredibly valuable. One of the most sought-after errors is the double die variety. A double die error occurs when the coin's design is struck twice, causing the lettering and details to appear doubled. For the 1965 Washington quarter, the most common places you'll find this error are in the word Liberty and the date, 1965. If you have one of these quarters, you might have stumbled upon a coin that could be worth a significant amount of money, but it doesn't end there. There's also the possibility of the off-center strike error. This happens when the blank planchet isn't properly aligned with the die during the minting process. The result is a coin where the design is partially off-center, which can create a unique, visually interesting piece. The 1965 Washington quarter with an off-center strike is quite rare and highly collectible, often fetching a much higher price than a regular, well-circulated coin. Another notable error is the clipped planchet. This occurs when a portion of the coin blank is actually missing, giving the coin an irregular shape. Clipped planchets are quite rare, and when you find one from the 1965 series, especially in great condition, it can cause collectors to take notice, and put a higher value on it. So, what are we really talking about here in terms of value? While a typical 1965 Washington quarter in average condition might only be worth a few dollars, the value skyrockets for coins with these rare errors. If you happen to come across a 1965 Washington quarter that is in mint condition, with one of these valuable errors, you could be looking at a price of $83,000, yes, you heard that right, $83,000. A 1965 Washington quarter with the right characteristics can be worth a small fortune. It's incredible how something so small and seemingly insignificant could hold so much potential value. Now, you might be wondering, how do you know if your 1965 Washington quarter is one of these rare, valuable coins? Well, the first step is to carefully examine the coin for any signs of errors or unusual features. If you notice any doubling in the letters or numbers, an off-center design, or a strange shape from a clipped planchet, that's a red flag that you might be holding on to something special. The next step is to get it professionally graded by a trusted coin grading service. This will help you determine its true value and give you a clearer picture of whether you've got a coin worth thousands or just a standard piece of change. But no matter what, whether your coin ends up being worth a lot or just a little, the excitement of finding a rare and valuable piece like the 1965 Washington quarter is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. It's the treasure hunt that keeps collectors coming back for more, always hoping that the next coin they find could be the one to change everything. So, next time you dig through your change jar or flip through your coin collection, remember that a coin like the 1965 Washington quarter could be sitting there, quietly waiting to surprise you with a big payout. Keep your eyes peeled, and you might just strike gold. We're going to take a deep dive into a coin that you might have seen countless times before, but didn't realize just how valuable it could be. I'm talking about the 1970 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that is much more than just a piece of everyday currency. Its rarity, historical significance, and some incredible errors make it one of the most intriguing and valuable quarters you might ever come across. So, stick around as we uncover everything that makes the 1970 Washington quarter such a prized find for collectors. Let's start with the basics. The 1970 Washington quarter was minted as part of the ongoing series of quarters featuring the image of George Washington. The coin itself is pretty straightforward. It features Washington's profile on the obverse, while the reverse displays the iconic eagle, a symbol of American strength and freedom. But the story of this coin isn't as simple as just its design. The year 1970 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history. During the 1970s, the U.S. government was dealing with inflation and rising production costs. This led to some adjustments in the minting process, including the reduction of silver content in certain coins. But what really sets the 1970 Washington quarter apart is the fact that it was the last year that quarters were minted with a high level of silver content, before the U.S. switched to a copper-nickel blend in 1971. That's right. The 1970 Washington quarter was still made of 90% silver, making it a desirable collector's item even before considering any errors or rarities. But it's not just the silver content that makes the 1970 Washington quarter something worth paying attention to. Over the years, certain errors and minting mistakes have been discovered on these coins, and that's where the real excitement begins for collectors. You see, there are a handful of very rare and highly valuable 1970 Washington quarters that were produced with noticeable mistakes that significantly increased their worth. Let's dive into some of these fascinating errors. Point 1. Of the most common errors that can make a 1970 Washington quarter highly valuable is the double die obverse error. Now, for those who are not familiar, a double die occurs when the coin's die strikes the coin more than once during the minting process, causing the image to appear doubled or even tripled. This results in some distinct distortions in the lettering and design, which can be particularly noticeable in the word Liberty and the date, 1970. Now, these errors don't just add a quirky, fun twist to the coin, they also add significant value. A 1970 Washington quarter with a double die error is considered an extremely rare find, and collectors will pay top dollar for it, sometimes upwards of tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the condition and severity of the error. This is the kind of coin that sends collectors into a frenzy at auctions, where bidding can soar due to its rarity. Another error that can boost the value of a 1970 Washington quarter is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is struck outside of the intended area, causing part of the design to be missing from one side. An off-center strike can be quite dramatic, with portions of the design completely absent, making these coins particularly striking and valuable. This error can occur to varying degrees, from a slight misalignment to a full off-center strike where much of the coin's design is missing. These types of quarters can be incredibly rare, and when one is discovered in decent condition, it can fetch a pretty hefty sum. And let's not forget about the clipped planchet error. This occurs when the blank metal planchet, the piece of metal used to create the coin, is clipped during the minting process. As a result, part of the coin is missing, creating an irregular shape. When this happens on a 1970 Washington quarter, collectors often go crazy for it, as clipped planchets are much less common and add a distinct, quirky charm to the coin. So, now that you know about the errors that can make the 1970 Washington quarter more valuable, let's talk about its market worth. A standard 1970 Washington quarter is worth a bit more than face value, given its 90% silver content, but if you've got one with a rare error, such as the double die, off-center strike, or clipped planchet, you could be sitting on a goldmine. But what's the true value of these coins? Well, a 1970 Washington quarter with no errors can be worth around $10 to $15 depending on its condition. However, once you add a significant minting error into the mix, that value can soar into the tens of thousands of dollars. And when you consider that the most extreme examples with rare and dramatic errors have been known to sell for incredibly high prices, it's easy to see why the 1970 Washington quarter is such a desirable piece for coin collectors. Hold on, because here comes the most exciting part. If you're lucky enough to have one of these 1970 Washington quarters with the right errors, or perhaps you've discovered one in near-perfect condition, it could be worth $739,000. Yes, you heard that correctly, $739,000. That's the kind of value a 1970 Washington quarter can achieve if it's one of the rarest examples with a minting error and is in excellent condition. This might sound unbelievable, but it's a testament to how valuable coins can become when they carry a unique history and an imperfection that collectors covet. So, what should you do if you think you have a 1970 Washington quarter that could be worth a fortune? First, take a closer look. Examine it carefully for any signs of errors like double dies, off-center strikes, or clipped planchets. If you spot something that looks unusual or rare, it's time to get the coin professionally graded by a trusted numismatic service. This will help determine its true worth and ensure you don't miss out on a potential jackpot. As always, coin collecting is all about the thrill of the hunt and the joy of discovering something unique. Whether you're looking for rare errors or simply want to learn more about these fascinating pieces of American history, the 1970 Washington quarter is a coin that brings excitement to collectors of all levels. Keep your eyes peeled and your magnifying glass ready. You never know when the next big discovery will come your way. Today, we've got something really exciting to discuss, something that might be hiding right in your pocket change or tucked away in an old coin jar. I'm talking about the 1983 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that is far more valuable than most people realize. While it may look like any other quarter, there's more to this coin than meets the eye. Some key factors, including its rarity, its unique characteristics, and a few fascinating minting errors, make this particular coin a serious find for any collector or investor. If you're new to coin collecting or a seasoned pro, trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Let's start with the basics. The 1983 Washington quarter is part of the long-running Washington quarter series, which has been in circulation since 1932. The design on the obverse features the profile of George Washington, the first President of the United States, and on the reverse, you'll see the American eagle perched proudly, a symbol of strength and freedom. These quarters have a distinct, simple, and elegant design that makes them a classic in American coinage. But as we dig deeper, you'll see that the 1983 Washington quarter holds much more value than its face value of 25 cents. In 1983, the U.S. Mint was dealing with the challenges of producing enough coins to meet the growing demand of a booming economy. While many people think of coins like the 1983 Washington quarter as just another everyday quarter, what makes this year and this particular coin special is how they were minted and some of the extremely rare errors that occurred during the production process. One of the main reasons this coin is so valuable to collectors is due to its rarity and the minting mistakes that occurred in some of the 1983 quarters. As with many coins from this era, there were certain variations and imperfections that make some 1983 Washington quarters worth much more than others. These errors are what can really drive up the value of a coin, especially when it's a rare mistake that wasn't caught during production. Now, let's talk about one of the most exciting errors to look out for in a 1983 Washington quarter, the double die obverse. This is one of the most coveted errors in the numismatic world, and it happens when a coin's die is misaligned during the minting process. The result? A doubled image, where parts of the coin's design, such as the word Liberty or even Washington's profile, appear multiple times, offset slightly from the original. These double die errors are incredibly rare, and finding one can be a game changer for any collector. Collectors are constantly on the lookout for double die obverse because of how dramatic the errors can be. Imagine finding a quarter with the word Liberty appearing twice, one slightly above the other. It's a striking feature that collectors pay top dollar for. If you have a 1983 Washington quarter that displays this error, you could be holding on to a very valuable piece of American coinage, but that's not the only error to watch out for. Another fascinating mistake that occurs with the 1983 Washington quarter is the off-center strike. When a coin is struck off-center, part of the design is cut off, leaving the coin with an unusual, asymmetrical appearance. These off-center strikes can vary in severity, from slightly off-center to completely misaligned, where large portions of the design are missing or shifted dramatically. The more extreme the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin becomes. Imagine holding a 1983 Washington quarter where the entire eagle on the reverse side is only partially visible or missing entirely. It would be a rare find indeed. This type of minting mistake makes the coin incredibly desirable to collectors who are always searching for unique, one-of-a-kind pieces to add to their collection. The rarity of these errors, coupled with the interest from collectors, significantly drives up the price. Another exciting error to look out for is the clipped planchet. A clipped planchet happens when a blank metal disc that's supposed to be struck into a coin is accidentally cut off before the minting process is finished. This results in a coin with a portion of its edge missing. The clipped planchet error is more common in older coins, but it's still a treasure when it comes to modern-day finds. If you happen to find a 1983 Washington quarter with a clipped edge, especially if it's in great condition, it can add a significant premium to its value. Now, let's take a step back and talk about the value of the 1983 Washington quarter without any errors. Without any minting mistakes, a standard 1983 Washington quarter made from cupronickel would only be worth around 25 cents, the face value. However, the true value lies in the rare finds with significant errors. The market for these coins has seen an increasing demand in recent years, particularly for high-grade examples with rare minting errors. As we dive deeper into the specifics of this coin's worth, you'll be excited to know that if you come across a 1983 Washington quarter with one of these incredible errors, whether it's the double die, off-center strike, or clipped planchet, it could be worth a small fortune. And when you think about it, finding a coin that was once just a regular piece of currency, now worth thousands of dollars, is pretty mind-blowing. The value of a 1983 Washington quarter with the right errors can go for an impressive $74,600. Yes, you heard that right. A rare 1983 Washington quarter with the right characteristics and minting errors can fetch a whopping $74,600. This is a substantial sum for a coin that might have been overlooked by most people. It's amazing to think that a simple quarter could hold so much value just because of a few small but significant mistakes in the minting process. So, if you're lucky enough to have a 1983 Washington quarter in your collection, or if you stumble upon one during your next coin hunt, be sure to examine it closely for any signs of these rare errors. You never know, you might be holding onto a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. As always, keep in mind that the condition of the coin also plays a huge role in its value. Coins that are in pristine, uncirculated condition will always command a higher price than those with significant wear. That's it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the 1983 Washington quarter and its potential to make you a coin collector's hero. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new update. Thanks for watching, and happy hunting.